Our immune system is not episodically fighting something like it would a flu or COVID-19. It is now fighting and fighting every single day because we're taking these things in on a regular basis. Hi, welcome to the Judy Torel Show, where I explore topics intended to optimize every body 50, 60, 70, and above. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Judy Torel Show. If you're tuning into this episode, then you are in the first of my 6th series on my 4th series of podcasts, and I am addressing topics that have to do with helping men and women both who are over 50, in their 50s, in their 60s, 70s, 80s, and beyond, to, live in bodies that are the best that they can be at the ages that we are. Sometimes I address topics having to do with exercise, sometimes having to do with eating, sometimes having to do with mental thinking, and anything related to being in an optimal body when you're 50 plus. So this is my 4th series, and the topic for this series is supplements. So I'm not a big supplement pusher in general, and I am very big on the behavioral aspects of, your everyday habits and patterns and what we're exposing ourselves to and what we eat and what's in our environment and what we think and what we take in the news and all things like that. But even when you're trying to be, pristine and only taking in the good and trying to alleviate some of the, things that are not so great for us, it's impossible to avoid everything that can come into our inner workings of our cells and create a suboptimal environment. So there are supplements that through my 4-decade practice, I have found that have been very beneficial, real positive results for both men and women. I'm addressing men and women both in this 4th series on the supplements. And so that is what I'm going to present on for this 6th series set. So this is episode number 1, and I'm going to talk about the supplement called Turmeric. And before I get to that in and of itself, I'm going to set the scene for why we might need to take it and what it can do for us. So, inflammation is a term that is thrown around quite often and more prevalently, not just with the 50 plus, but in general. And for 50 plus, it is a big topic. So inflammation is basically what our bodies were meant to do, have evolved to do when a substance has gotten in to the working inner cellular level and is in our immune system kind of identifies, there's an enemy within, and it sends in its frontline defenses, killer T cells, cytokines, a whole host of immune response. And if you have a virus or a bacteria that got in there, then we want that to happen. Immune, inflammation coming, as the forefront of the immune system's way to combat things that shouldn't be in our body is a very good thing when it happens episodically. But what we're dealing with in our current environment and world is what is called chronic inflammation. And chronic inflammation is not such a good thing. Chronic inflammation is when your immune system is kind of stuck on hyper mode because it's got so many things or too much of one particular thing that has gotten into the working element, the cellular level of our body, and it shouldn't be there. So what can cause inflammation? There are a whole large subcategories of foods that can possibly inflame a body. Some people are more susceptible than others. Different stages of your life, you might be more susceptible to these foods. Dairy, gluten, grass grains, highly refined sugars, food additives like red dye, or any food colorings that are not natural, fillers that are in foods, flavor enhancers, texturizers, and then there's environmental things that we breathe in through our nose and our lungs, and then bacterias and viruses and things get into the bloodstream and then carried into our cells. So there is a whole host of things that are on a microscopic level that can get into our body that shouldn't be there, that we are actively taking in through our lifestyles. And then our immune system is not episodically fighting something like it would a flu or COVID-19. It is now fighting and fighting every single day because we're taking these things in on a regular basis. Now, add to the fact that if you're 50 plus, your body is older. It has a lot more than just these things that we're breathing and ingesting that it's fighting. It's got, it's just been cellular repair is less efficient. It's got a lot of cleanup work that has to be done. And so when you have chronic inflammation when you're over 50, it's almost like the body has so much work to do. It can't stay up to date. And so your inflammation levels stay high as it's trying to stay on top of all these things that are coming into it. So we need a little help. Now, you can minimize the foods that I just talked about that are inflammatory. You can try to minimize processed foods that have elements added to it and ingredients added to it that are inflammatory. You can try to control the environment so you're not living in an area of the country that has high exhaust or smog or things like that. Avoid secondhand smoke, things like that. But like I said earlier, you're never going to avoid all these things. So there is a supplement, and many of you have probably heard about it, that is very in vogue. It is originated in India, and it's used in Indian cooking for coloring. It doesn't really have a lot of flavor per se, but it is called turmeric. And like I said, it has been used in food in India, but it has subsequently come to be known in 21st century medicine as a very powerful, it's a root, by the way, it's a natural, plant, but it's a root that has elements in it that help our body to fight inflammation. And so if you're a 50 plus male or female and you're living in a 50 plus body and you're living in the current 21st century world and you're eating food that you're not growing yourself or is completely clean, and none of us are doing that, then we can use a little help from the supplement called turmeric. So it is a root, like I said, and you can buy it in the grocery stores in the spice aisle. And you can add it to foods that you're cooking for color and a little bit of flavor. But the amount that you're going to get from that may not be effective for helping with chronic inflammation, as I just described it happens, and in an older body that needs really more of a boost to help, with the fighting of these elements and the inflammation. So I recommend a liquid turmeric. And I'm not married to any brand, and nor would I push a particular brand on this podcast. But the reason why I recommend a liquid over, let's say, a capsule or a pill is because when you take it in, it is a more readily absorbable source or form, I should say, in a liquid form. It goes into your digestive system. It's immediately brought through into the mucous membranes, into the bloodstream, picked up, and then carried, around the cell into the cells of your body where it's necessary to do its work. So if you are over 50, male or female, and you have, achy joints or you feel puffy and swollen, rings get really tight, you've got distension in your belly, like I said, joint and muscle, soreness and a bit of inflammation means swelling. So you've got like fluid that is not normally there if it wasn't for this, fluid coming into the muscles and the cells to try and help the body to combat inflammation. So it gets into there and it just helps to increase your capacity to manage chronic inflammation. So turmeric, which comes from a root, the product that I recommend, or the ones that you should look for, is you're looking for ones that have the highest amount of the turmeric. And so some of the liquids, I'm going to show you one right here. This is one that I have found. It's available on Amazon, but it has 1,000 milligrams per tablespoon. So this is a pretty high amount. I would always tell you that if you're going to take anything, supplement, food, whatever, and you're on any sort of medications, that you should check with your doctor to see if there's any interactive effects. But if you get the approval from your doctor, liquid turmeric at 100 milligrams, 1,000 milligrams or more per serving is going to be a supplement that is well worth your while to add to your daily regime. You don't have to wait until you're feeling, swollen, or you have joint aches or muscle soreness to take the supplement. I'm actually kind of recommending it as a daily thing to aid in, well, everybody over 50 has inflammation that's chronic and we're battling. So to take it on a daily basis is what I'm recommending. So males and females both. And I also will tell you, because I am in this category, if you're somebody who works out a lot in your 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and beyond, you get inflammation from, the tissue of the muscle from being worked a lot gets damaged and needs to be repaired. And you'll have inflammation coming in as part of the healing and the recovery process for that. And again, if it's happening episodically, that's fine. But when it's chronic, then you can use a little help with keeping the inflammation there to do its work, but then not get stuck and chronically getting in the way now of repair and, the optimal processing of the body at a cellular level. So supplement number 1 is liquid turmeric or turmeric. People say it different ways. 1,000 milligrams per dose is a very high amount that is beneficial, and I'm recommending the higher amounts because the lesser amounts may not be enough to get to critical mass to actually be enough to help. So episode number 1, take your liquid turmeric, look for it in health food stores and Whole Food stores, and you can buy it online. And that's supplement number 1. And stay tuned for episode number 2. I'm going to be doing 6 different supplements by the end of this series. So be well, everybody. Thank you for listening always. And let's help make sure that our second 50 are even better than our first 50. Bye, everybody. Thanks for listening, everybody. And if you'd like to have access to some of my additional resources, I can be found at Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and on my website, www.judytorel.com.